Today's reading is an intriguing story by Japanese writer Akutagawa Ryunosuke called Yabu no Naka, or In a Grove. This is a very different story from your regular short story formats in that there is no beginning, middle, and conclusion. It simply talks about a particular incident from the perspective of 7 different people, leaving us to draw our own conclusions. The story is taken from the book Rashomon and 17 Other Stories, translated from Japanese by Professor J. Rubin, who is also the translator for many of Murakami's works. Known as the father of the Japanese short story, Akutagawa's literary accomplishments were such that Japan's premier literary accolade, the Akutagawa Prize, is named after him. His stories enthrall the reader with his stylistic brilliance, joining the classical and the contemporary with masterful ease, while conjuring vivid imagery along with a deep psychological insight into human nature. Many of you may be already familiar with Akutagawa's works but might not know it, since his stories like Rashomon and the story we are going to read today, Yabu no Naka, were the inspiration behind Akira Kurosawa's 1950 classic Rashomon, a film which scooped up the Golden Lion at the 1951 Venice Film Festival, as well as the Oscar for Best Foreign Film the following year. Akutagawa lived a very troubled life and finally committed suicide at the young age of 35. In such a short span, he left behind a remarkable legacy. So without further ado, let's get into it. Yabu no Naka, or In a Grove. The testimony of a woodcutter under questioning by the magistrate. That is true, Your Honor. I am the one who found the body. I went out as usual this morning to cut cedar in the hills behind my place. The body was in a bamboo grove on the other side of the mountain. Its exact location? A few 100 yards off the Yamashina Post Road. A deserted place where a few scrub cedar trees are mixed in with the bamboo. The man was lying on his back, in his pale blue robe with the sleeves tied up, and one of those fancy Kyoto-style black hats with the sharp creases. He had only one stab wound, but it was right in the middle of his chest. The bamboo leaves around the body were soaked with dark red blood. No, the bleeding had stopped. The wound looked dry, and I remember it had a big horsefly sucking on it so hard the thing didn't even notice my footsteps. Did I see a sword or anything? No, sir, not a thing. Just a length of rope by the cedar tree, next to the body, and, oh yes, there was a comb there too. Just the rope and the comb is all. But the weeds and the bamboo leaves on the ground were pretty trampled down. He must have put up a tremendous fight before they killed him. How's that, sir? A horse? No, a horse could never have gotten into that place. It's all bamboo thicket between there and the road. The testimony of a traveling priest under questioning by the magistrate. I'm sure I passed the man yesterday, Your Honor. Yesterday at about noon, I'd say, near Checkpoint Hill, on the way to Yamashina. He was walking toward the checkpoint with a woman on horseback. She wore a stiff, round straw hat with a long veil hanging down around the brim. I couldn't see her face, just her robe. I think it had a kind of dark red outer layer with a blue-green lining. The horse was a dappled grey with a tinge of red, and I'm fairly sure it had a clipped mane. Was it a big horse? I'd say it was a few inches taller than most, but I'm a priest after all. I don't know much about horses. The man? No, sir. He had a good-sized sword, and he was equipped with a bow and arrows. I can still see that black lacquered quiver of his. He must have had 20 arrows in it, maybe more. I would never have dreamt that a thing like this could happen to such a man. What is the life of a human being? A drop of dew, a flash of lightning? This is so sad, so sad. What can I say? The testimony of a policeman under questioning by the magistrate. The man I captured, Your Honor. I am certain he's the famous bandit Tajomaru. True, when I caught him he had fallen off his horse, and he was moaning and groaning on the stone bridge at Awataguchi. The time, sir? It was last night at the first watch. He was wearing the same dark blue robe and carrying the same long sword he used the time I almost captured him before. You can see he also has a bow and arrow now. Oh, is that so, sir? The dead man, too? That settles it, then. I'm sure this Tajomaru fellow is the murderer. A leather-wrapped bow, a quiver in black lacquer, 17 hawk feather arrows. They must have belonged to the victim. And yes, as you say, sir, the horse is a dappled grey with a touch of red, and it has a clipped mane. It's only a dumb animal, but it gave that bandit just what he deserved, throwing him like that. It was a short way beyond the bridge, trailing its reins on the ground and eating plume grass by the road. Of all the bandits prowling around Kyoto, this Tajomaru is known as a fellow who likes the women. Last fall, people at Toribe Temple found a pair of worshippers murdered, a woman and a child, on the hill behind the statue of Binzuru. Everybody said Tajomaru must have done it. If it turns out he killed the man, there's no telling what he might have done to the woman who was on the horse. I don't mean to meddle, sir, but I do think you ought to question him about that. The testimony of an old woman under questioning by the magistrate. Yes, Your Honor. My daughter was married to the dead man. He is not from the capital, though. He was a samurai, serving in the Wakasa provincial office. His name was Kanazawa no Takehiro, and he was 26 years old. No, sir, he was a very kind man. I can't believe anyone would have hated him enough to do this. My daughter, sir, her name is Masago, and she's 19 years old. She's as bold as any man, but the only man she has ever known is Takehiro. Her complexion is a little on the dark side, and she has a mole by the outside corner of her left eye. But her face is a tiny, perfect oval. Takehiro left for Wakasa yesterday with my daughter. But what turn of fate could have led to this? There's nothing I can do for my son-in-law anymore. But what could have happened to my daughter? I'm worried sick about her. Oh, please, sir, do everything you can to find her. Leave no stone unturned. I have lived a long time, but I have never wanted anything so badly in my life. Oh, how I hate that bandit, that Tajomaru. Not only my son-in-law, but my daughter. Tajomaru's confession. Sure, I killed the man, but I didn't kill the woman. So where did she go? I don't know any better than you do. Now wait just a minute. You can torture me all you want, but I can't tell you what I don't know. And besides, now that you've got me, I'm not going to hide anything. I'm no coward. I met that couple yesterday, a little afternoon. The second I saw them, a puff of wind lifted a veil and I caught a peek at her. Just a peek. That's maybe why she looked so perfect to me. An absolute bodhisattva of a woman. I made up my mind right then to take her even if I had to kill the man. Oh, come on. Killing a man is not as big a thing as people like you seem to think. If you're going to take somebody's woman, a man has to die. When I kill a man, I do it with my sword. But people like you don't use swords. You gentlemen kill with your power, with your money, and sometimes just with your words. You tell people you're doing them a favor. True, no blood flows. The man is still alive, but you've killed him all the same. I don't know whose sin is greater, yours or mine. Of course, if you can take the woman without killing the man, all the better. Which is exactly what I was hoping to do yesterday. It would have been impossible on the Yamashina Post Road, of course, so I thought of a way to lure them into the hills. It was easy. I fell in with them on the road and made up a story. I told them I had found an old burial mound in the hills, and when I opened it, it was full of swords and mirrors and things. I said I had buried the stuff in a bamboo grove on the other side of the mountain to keep anyone from finding out about it, and I'd sell it cheap to the right buyer. He started getting interested soon enough. It's scary what greed can do to people, don't you think? In less than an hour, I was leading that couple and their horse up a mountain trail. When we reached the grove, I told them the treasure was buried in there, and they should come inside with me and look at it. The man was so hungry for the stuff by then he couldn't refuse, but the woman said she'd wait there on the horse. I figured that would happen. The woods are so thick. They fell right into my trap. We left the women alone and went into the grove. It was all bamboo at first. 50 yards or so inside, there was a sort of open clump of cedars, the perfect place for what I was planning to do. I pushed through the thicket and made up some nonsense about how the treasure was buried under one of them. When he heard that, the man charged towards some scrawny cedars visible up ahead. The bamboo thinned out and the trees were standing there in a row. As soon as we got to them, I grabbed him and pinned him down. I could see he was a strong man. He carried a sword. But I took him by surprise, and he couldn't do a thing. I had him tied to the base of a tree in no time. Where did I get the rope? Well, I'm a thief, you know. I might have to scale a wall at any time, so I've always got a piece of rope in my belt. I stuffed his mouth full of bamboo leaves to keep him quiet. That's all there was to it. Once I finished with the man, I went and told the woman that her husband had suddenly been taken ill and she should come and have a look at him. This was another bull's eye, of course. She took off her hat and let me lead her by the hand into the grove. As soon as she saw the man tied to the tree, though, she whipped a dagger out of her breast. I never saw a woman with such fire. If I'd been off my guard, she'd have stuck that thing in my gut. And the way she kept coming, she would have done me some damage eventually, no matter how much I dodged. Still, I am Tajomaru. One way or another, I managed to knock the knife out of her hand without drawing my sword. Even the most spirited woman is going to be helpless if she hasn't got a weapon. And so I was able to make the woman mine without taking her husband's life. Yes, you heard me, without taking her husband's life. I wasn't planning to kill him on top of everything else. The woman was on the ground, crying, and I was getting ready to run out of the grove and leave her there when, all of a sudden, she grabbed my arm like some kind of crazy person. And then I heard what she was shouting between sobs. She could hardly catch a breath. Either you die, or my husband dies. It has to be one of you. It's worse than death for me to have 2 men see my shame. I want to stay with the one left alive, whether it's you or him. That gave me a wild desire to kill a husband. When I say this, you probably think I'm crueler than you are. But that's because you didn't see the look on her face. And especially, you never saw the way her eyes were burning at that moment. When those eyes met mine, I knew I wanted to make her my wife. Let the Thunder God kill me, I'd make her my wife. That was the only thought in my mind. And no, not just from lust. I know that's what you gentlemen are thinking. If lust was all I felt for her, I'd already taken care of that. I could have just kicked her down and gotten out of there. And the man wouldn't have stained my sword with his blood. But the moment my eyes locked onto hers in that dark grove, I knew I couldn't leave there until I had killed him. Still, I didn't want to kill him in a cowardly way. I untied him and challenged him to a sword fight. That piece of rope they found was the one I threw aside then. The man looked furious as he drew his big sword, and without a word he sprang at me in a rage. I don't have to tell you the outcome of that fight. My sword pierced his breast on the 23rd thrust. Not till the 23rd. I want you to keep that in mind. I still admire him for that. He's the only man who ever lasted even 20 thrusts with me. As he went down, I lowered my bloody sword and turned towards the woman. But she was gone. I looked for her among the cedars, but the bamboo leaves on the ground showed no sign she'd ever been there. I cocked my ear for any sound of her, but all I could hear was the man's death rattle. Maybe she had run through the underbrush to call for help when the sword fight started. The thought made me fear for my life. I grabbed the man's sword and his bow and arrows and headed straight for the mountain road. The woman's horse was still there, just chewing on grass. Anything else I could tell you after that would be a waste of breath. I got rid of his sword before coming to Kyoto, though. So that's my confession. I always knew my head would end up hanging in the tree outside the prison someday. So let me have the ultimate punishment. Penitent confession of a woman in the Kiyomitsu temple. After the man in the dark blue robe had his way with me, he looked at my husband, all tied up, and taunted him with laughter. How humiliated my husband must have felt. He squirmed and twisted in the ropes that covered his body, but the knots ate all the deeper into his flesh. Stumbling, I ran to his side. No, I tried to run to him, but instantly the man kicked me down. And that was when it happened. That was when I saw the indescribable glint in my husband's eyes. Truly, it was indescribable. It makes me shudder to recall it even now. My husband was unable to speak a word, and yet, in that moment, his eyes conveyed his whole heart to me. What I saw shining there was neither anger nor sorrow. It was the cold flash of contempt. Contempt for me. This struck me more painfully than the bandit's kick. I let out a cry and collapsed on the spot. When I regained consciousness, the man in blue was gone. The only one there in the grove was my husband, still tied to the cedar tree. I just barely managed to raise myself on the carpet of dead bamboo leaves and look into my husband's face. His eyes were exactly as they had been before, with that same cold look of contempt and hatred. How can I describe the emotion that filled my heart then? Shame, sorrow, anger. I staggered over to him. Oh, my husband. Now that this has happened, I cannot go on living with you. I am prepared to die here and now. But you, yes, I want you to die as well. You witnessed my shame. I cannot leave you behind with that knowledge. I struggled to say everything I needed to say, but my husband simply went on staring at me in disgust. I felt as if my breast would burst open at any moment, but holding my feelings in check, I began to search the bamboo thicket for a sword. The bandit must have taken it. I couldn't find it anywhere, and my husband's bow and arrows were gone as well. But then I had the good luck to find the dagger at my feet. I brandished it before my husband and spoke to him once again. This is the end, then. Please, be so good as to allow me to take your life. I will quickly follow you in death. When he heard this, my husband finally began moving his lips. Of course, his mouth was stuffed with bamboo leaves, so he couldn't make a sound, but I knew immediately what he was saying. With total contempt for me, he said only, "Do it." Drifting somewhere between dream and reality, I thrust the dagger through the chest of his pale blue robe. Then I lost consciousness again. When I was able to look around me at last, my husband, still tied to the tree, was no longer breathing. Across his ashen face shone a streak of light from the setting sun, filtered through the bamboo and cedar. Gulping back my tears, I untied him and cast the rope aside. And then what happened to me? I no longer have the strength to tell it. That I failed to kill myself is obvious. I tried to stab myself in the throat. I threw myself in a pond at the foot of the mountain. Nothing worked. I am still here, by no means proud of my inability to die. Perhaps even Kanzion, Bodhisattva of compassion, has turned away from me from being so weak. But now that I have killed my husband, now that I have been violated by a bandit, what am I to do? Tell me, what am I to do? The testimony of the dead man's spirit told through a medium. After the bandit had his way with my wife, he sat there on the ground trying to comfort her. I could say nothing, of course, and I was bound to the cedar tree. But I kept trying to signal her with my eyes. Don't believe anything he tells you. He's lying, no matter what he says. I tried to convey my meaning to her, but she just went on cringing there on the fallen bamboo leaf, staring at her knees. And I could see she was listening to him. I writhed with jealousy, but the bandit kept his smooth talk going from one point to the next. Now that your flesh has been sullied, things will never be the same with your husband. Don't stay with him. Come and be my wife. It's because I love you so much that I was so wild with you. The bandit had the gall to speak to her like that. When my wife raised her face in response to them, she seemed almost spellbound. I had never seen her look so beautiful as she did at that moment. And what do you think this beautiful wife of mine said to the bandit? In my presence, in the presence of a husband bound hand and foot. My spirit may be wandering now between one life and the next, but every time I recall her answer, I burn with indignation. All right, she told him. Take me anywhere you like. And that was not her only crime against me. If that were all she did, I would not be suffering so here in the darkness. with him leading her by the hand. She was stepping out of the bamboo grove as if in a dream, when suddenly the color drained from her face and she pointed back to me. "Kill him!" she screamed. "Kill him! I can't be with you as long as he's alive!" Again and again she screamed as if she had lost her mind. "Kill him! Kill him!" Even now, her words, like a windstorm, threatened to blow me headlong into the darkest depths. Have such hateful words ever come out from the mouth of a human being before? Have such damnable words ever reached the ears of a human being before? Have such... Even the bandit went pale when he heard her. She clung to his arms and screamed again, "Kill him!" The bandit stared at her, saying neither that he would kill me nor that he would not. The next thing I knew, however, he sent my wife sprawling on the bamboo leaves with a single kick. The bandit calmly folded his arms and turned to look at me. "What do you want me to do with her?" he asked. "Kill her or let her go?" Just nod to answer. "Kill her?" For this, if for nothing else, I am ready to forgive the bandit his crimes. When I hesitated with my answer, my wife let out a scream and darted into the depths of the bamboo thicket. He sprang after her, but I don't think he even managed to lay a hand on her sleeve. I watched the spectacle as if it was some kind of vision. After my wife ran off, the bandit picked up my sword and bow and arrows, and he cut my ropes at one place. "Now it's my time to run," I remember hearing him mutter as he disappeared from the thicket. Then the whole area was quiet. No, I could hear someone weeping. While I was untying myself, I listened to the sound until I realized that I was the one crying. I finally raised myself, exhausted, from the foot of the tree. Lying there before me was the dagger that my wife had dropped. I picked it up and shoved it into my chest. Some kind of bloody mass rose to my mouth, but I felt no pain at all. My chest grew cold, and then everything sank into stillness. What perfect silence! In the skies above that grove on the hidden side of the mountain, not a single bird came to sing. The lonely glow of the sun lingered among the high branches of cedar and bamboo. The sun, but gradually even that began to fade, and with it the cedars and bamboo. I lay there, wrapped in a deep silence. Then stealthy footsteps came up to me. I tried to see who it was, but the darkness had closed in all around me. Someone gently pulled the dagger from my chest with an invisible hand. Again, a rush of blood filled my mouth, but then I sank, once and for all, into the darkness between lives.